Movies kill reading. Just kidding. Well, there are people who for a very long time believe that cinema is a bad influence on book reception. It cannot be denied that cinema can draw attention to literature. In fact, film adaptation of literary works has been a staple of the movie industry. Thus, movies have introduced audiences to a wide variety of literary works, or at least made them aware that they exist, or have reinforced their love for an already read book. Also, the question as to the fidelity of the movie adaptation to the literary version could spark interest among audiences, new or old readers alike. In this video, our stance is simple. There is a dynamic and mutual relationship between literature and cinema. Let's first discuss the mutual visualization process that the consumers of literature and film go through. According to George Bluestone, both the author and the director attempt to make you see. While the book tries to make you see through the mind, the film tries to make you see through the eye, both creating pictures. One is mental and the other one is physical. Literature and film are both artistic expressions that make you visualize, tapping on your imagination and comprehension and ennobling your human mind. Whether it be mental or physical perception, the reader or the viewer is exposed to stimuli which get them to see, interpret, and decode fundamental literary elements according to their own reasoning and background. Looking more closely to their dynamic and narrative aspects, literature and cinema share a common and complementary way of storytelling. Consumers of both forms devour narrative of deep and abstract ideas and thoughts. Readers grasp the story of a literary work through immersing themselves into the text, investing into the words and sentences, and thereby creating mental action. Viewers, meanwhile, comprehend the story as it moves in front of them through the screen. In this sense, great film adaptations also assist viewers in understanding the books they were based on. This is because literary language may be translated effectively into popular language. In this case, cinematic language that presents ready-made flesh and blood characters and a definite outline of time and space. The reader doesn't have to fill in the blanks themselves, as the film now becomes the investigation and eventually the showcase of certain places or periods, featuring like fashion, architecture, tribulations, and so on. In Dudley Andrews' words, an adaptation is the matching of cinematic science system to a prior achievement in some other system. While it may be impossible to retain the original flavor of the text, adaptations could still nevertheless approximate the narrative and strengthen it with today's flavor or taste. This is also one reason why sometimes, or like most of the time, film adaptations go beyond or alter the original narrative. Things now depend on the skills of the directors and the filmmakers, and of course, some commercial forces. Jeffrey Wagner suggested 3 classes of film adaptation. The first class is what he called transposition, in which the source literature is presented without substantial interference, meaning the film is kept extremely faithful to the original text. The second class is what he called commentary, in which there are intentional or unintentional alterations in some respect. This is kind of faithful, kind of not so faithful adaptation. And the third class is what he called analogy, which presents a fair departure from the source text. Wagner highlights that this departure is for the sake of creating another work of art. Now actually, let's talk about literary works that have been adapted into films. Who would not, of course, know of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, or J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, or Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, or Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, or Ernest Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, or simply Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. I'm also very sure we are very familiar with numerous movie adaptations of Grimm's fairy tales, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Films like Troy and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou have also been based on lit, that is, Homer's works Iliad and Odyssey. As if these weren't enough evidence of the influence of literature in cinema, let's talk about other award-winning literary adaptations, starting with the film adaptation of Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray portrait in 1945, which won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, a Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actress, and a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Bravo. Also, a film adaptation of John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. It also won an Oscar for Best Director and for Best Actress in Supporting Role. Speaking of Steinbeck, The East of Eden was adapted into film in 1955, which starred the legendary James Dean. You've got that James Dean daydream look in your eye. I digress. Well, some other Oscar winners are like If Beale Street Could Talk, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, Black Panther, and First Man were all based on books. And this list is not even 1% of all the books that have been made into films. But I should wrap up now. A movie may not be a perfect match of a literary work, but considering convergences and divergences across all forms of expression, we figure that literature and cinema still inspire and enrich each other. While literature has widely inspired filmmakers, cinema has brought new considerations, perspectives, and approaches to literary works. Literature has written great stories for us, while cinema has brought these stories to life even more through visuals, sound, music, and cast. We should give each of these art forms high-minded respect while recognizing the full value of their intertextuality.